Hello, my name is Michael LeDuc. I served in Weapons Platoon, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. I served in Iraq from June through December of 2004. Towards the end of October of that year, my company, as well as the other companies from a battalion, were all pretty much called into the outskirts of Camp Fallujah to an area called the Iraqi Training Center, or ITC. We were being marshaled there along with several other battalions from both the Army and the Marine Corps for what we found out was going to be the second invasion of Fallujah, known as Operation Phantom Fury. In the weeks of us training there up until the actual invasion, during that time, one day, the battalion JAG officer, who's basically our battalion legal counsel, he's basically the battalion's final authority on the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. He pulled us all together, made sure the embedded reporters weren't there with us at the time, and proceeded to basically give us what was going to be a rules of engagement brief that were for Fallujah. He opened up pretty much by pretty much reviewing the fact that for the previous 5 months we'd been in country, that the rules of engagement we operated under were extremely strict, very typical of an occupation of the security and stability operations for which we had trained. And this was all about to change, being as we were going into a full-on assault into a city. The bottom line was that now the decision as to what hostile action and what hostile intent was would be left to even the most junior of non-commissioned officers. So this is at the squad leader and team leader level, that decisions of what signified hostile intent and hostile action was. Another thing that they were pushing was a tactic called reconnaissance by fire, which meant if for any reason we felt unsafe or unsure about a situation, most typically us going in to clear a house or a building, that we were granted the ability, based on that presumption, that we could do anything we want to that house before we entered it. That's from lighting up with 5.56 and 7.62, from shooting rockets and calling in mortars on it, to using a tank or a bulldozer to level the house, or calling in artillery or an airstrike, just on basically a whim. The battalion JAG officer also elaborated that he had been given a $20 million allowance by command to pay out property claims from people whose property we destroyed, and they wanted reparations for it. Nothing like that ever happened, though. The character of how the invasion went made it basically impossible for anyone to do that kind of thing. This was a really big switch from what we'd been used to for the first 5 months. We had gone from basically it was called the escalation of force, to which is how we had to respond to a situation where basically you'd only respond to deadly force under very specific conditions. But now it was basically we were going to be operating under the assumption that everyone was hostile. He sort of wrapped up the brief by sort of going, "Okay, Marines, you see an individual with a weapon, what do you do?" Sort of a mutter in silence for a minute, waiting for someone else to answer, and one guy said, "Shoot him." Battalion JAG officer said, "No. Shooting at a target, putting rounds downrange and suppressing a target is one thing. Sighting in and killing a target is another." So again, you see an individual with a weapon, what do you do? Kill him. You see an individual with a pair of binoculars, what do you do? Kill him. You see an individual with a cell phone out, what do you do? Kill him. You see an individual who, although maybe not being actually carrying anything or displaying any specific hostile action or intent, running from, say, one building to another, or running across the street, or even running away from you, assume that he is maneuvering against you and kill him. You see an individual with a white flag and he does anything but approach you slowly and obey your commands, assume it's a trick and kill him. Fallujah, we went by those ROAs. Fighting was fairly intense for the first few days especially. as under the whole recon by fire thing, we leveling houses before we even went in became pretty commonplace, using bulldozers and tanks to do the job for us and walking the rubble. On top of all the destruction that we just wrought in general, a lot of extra stuff happened too. Like, if after the first few days things began, to calm down incrementally, and we'd be holed up in houses and whatnot for a few hours to maybe a day or two, and we'd get bored, we'd get angry, and not be tired anymore, and just be like, let's break stuff. There are other instances, stuff like we ran out of people to shoot, so we just started turning into dogs and cats, chickens, whatever's moving. Some guys, they'd start naming the bodies that were left out in the streets for a while that we were looking at, like Rotten Randy and Tony the Torso, and sometimes some people would actually try to more accurately adjust the sights on their rifles by using the heads of people laid out in the street. Just fire a shot. If it hit too far to the left, say, and adjust the sight, shoot again. Just adjusting the sights off that. I remember one instance where there was we were on the roof of a mosque that had just been taken maybe a day before. It was daylight, and about not too far away, basically across the street, there was a house where it seemed as though an entire family had sort of just been holed up in a basement for a while, and they'd come out, and it was, I'd be surprised if it wasn't the whole family. There were a few men, a few women, a bunch of kids. To what they're coming out and waving signified to me is they were trying to let us know that they were there and they were unarmed, and that we should sort of just take the situation from there. One of the Marines on scene's reaction to that was to shoot at them. I don't know if he was actually specifically aiming in. None of them got hit, but they just ran back in. We never saw them again. Remember stuff like hanging out in houses, and then we decided to start going through stuff, and we'd look through their family photo albums and stuff like that, and we'd look at pictures of the house and pictures of the neighborhood and compare it to what it looked like now after all that had went down, and we'd have a good laugh about it. One story, I guess, kind of stands out is this one night we were heading out of the mayor's complex in the center of the city. I was attached to a squad, and we were going out to basically occupy a house as an observation point. We were doing this in the middle of the night. The area around the mayor's complex, the city's sewer system had been damaged by bombs, and the streets had been flooded with sewer water. And that water also as the fighting went on, continued to basically fill up with dead bodies as well. So it was pretty horrible. The day before, what had happened was several people had been shot not too far outside the wall of the mayor's complex, and they detained the rest of the people that they found. Included among them was this woman who was a wife of one of the men who was killed, and her, I believe, either uncle or father, who was blind. And part of what we were doing that night is, on our way to this observation point, we were supposed to be escorting them back to the house. They were lagging behind, they were holding us up, we started worrying, and halfway there we just sort of left them there standing in the middle of the flooded streets and went on to our objective and just let them do their own thing. I joined the military originally with the intention of trying to contribute something positive, trying to do something good to improve the sort of whole human situation. And I felt that I felt at the time that Iraq was a good place to do that. And I admit that I was very young and naive at the time, and I was wrong. I really won't say that I'm overly wrought by anything that happened. For the most part, my service in the military can be characterized by, so there were some times where I actually got to do what I wanted to do, and I got to do what, I felt good about myself a few times. But for the most part, I was just doing what I had to do, and that was all of us. Whether that was breaking the rules or following them, whether I was doing what I thought was right or doing what I knew was wrong.